BST on a Sunday. Again, we do Sunday Mindset. Welcome back to the show, John Hefter and Norm Farrar. We're waiting on Liran Hirschkorn. I'm sure he'll join us in a moment or two. First things, John, a little bit of news. I hear there's a B in order.
There is, yes. We are in the very fortuitous circumstance of doing another round of funding. And according to our records and some external records of the people invested in us, we're the fastest profitable company ever to reach $1 billion valuation.
Wow. And that's not just on Amazon, that's in history, is it?
That's correct.
Wow.
Yes.
And so in comparison to other businesses that trade on Amazon, are you the most valuable private label business, or how would that work out?
I don't know. We haven't quite done that math. It's hard enough focusing on ourselves to make sure we're doing a good job than to worry about too much what other people are doing.
Yes.
But it's a testament to a lot of things, like our commitment to sort of hard work or tremendous focus, but there's also a little bit of serendipity in anything in life. And we've been very fortunate to be in the circumstance we're in today, and very excited about our future. We celebrated for about 30 seconds and then got right back into a meeting and said, like, all right, what are we doing next? So, we'll see how it goes, but I feel extremely fortunate or blessed, or whatever word you want to use, to be where we are and, looking forward to the future.
So may I ask, are you one of the co-founders of the business as well?
I'm on the original founding team, which is 4 people. Josh and Carlos are the co-founders. And then I'm doing pretty well for myself too, to be on that team, and very lucky. So Stephanie Fox and myself are the 2 other sort of original 4 of the company.
Lovely. So Chris would be at yours at Christmas. That'd be lovely. Right, Liran, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you for having me.
No worries.
Great.
How's your week been?
Been good. Focused. Working.
Cool. We've just, in case you missed it, we've just been chatting to John. A $1 billion valuation, fastest growing, profitable company in history. That's incredible.
Yes, I saw the news a couple of days ago. I think Ken posted on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I saw that. Congratulations.
Cool. Yeah. So great news there, John. That is a phenomenal achievement. And it's probably all down to the book that you're going to read. No, I'm joking. But it does help having the understanding in terms of, we obviously 1 week 2 are discussing books that changed your lives. And I'm sure there are plenty of books that played the role in order you getting on the founding team, from the founding team to the success you have, and the people that you surround yourself with is very important. So quick introductions should we go around the room. John, do you want to give a little quick introduction on you? I know we just talked about the team, but what about yourself?
Sure. So John Hefter, on the executive team at Thrasio. We acquire and optimize Amazon businesses. Just sort of told you the story there, and I'm going to keep it that short because I feel like I've already talked enough about myself. So we'll move on to Loren.
No worry, Liran, your turn.
Liran Hirschkorn. Been in the Amazon space since 2014. Been self-employed since 2010. And I also run an Amazon ads agency.
Excellent. Norm?
My name's Norm Ferrar. I've been in e-commerce since about early 90s or mid 90s, and been involved with manufacturing, sourcing. You pretty much name it. If it has to do with e-commerce, I've been there. Amazon's my perfect storm, and I own a company called PR Reach and Honu Worldwide.
Excellent.
Norm, have you, since your beginning in e-commerce, did you have the beard back then too, or was it?
I had a beard when I was 4.
And he's been growing it ever since. Okay, so kicking off proceedings, John, do you want to put forward your book, give a description about the book, and what are some of the meaningful things that you took from that book, and then you applied that to your life?
Sure. Yeah, I had trouble selecting a book, but then it became very simple for me. Actually, just on the heels of his 90th birthday for Thomas Sowell, who the playwright David Mamet called America's greatest living philosopher, and I am in full accordance to believe that. Thomas Sowell's book, Basic Economics, changed the entire, sort of shifted the paradigm of how I think about everything in life, almost. It was amazing to be supposedly educated and then to sort of like stumble on this on my own and to find something that just totally ripped up so many of my preconceived notions and switch them, and then just pounds you with the preponderance of facts and evidence. So what I'll do at some point is sort of I try to take some of his quotes and render them down to my top 10 favorite Thomas Sowell quotes of all time. And I think for people who are interested in this topic in philosophy and economics, it'll make you want to sort of dive into his work even further.
Yeah. And so with the book itself, you read the book, but do you remember a categoric point where you were actually referenced the book? It was something that you did from that book, and could you explain that to us?
Sure. Yeah, I would say like you have these sort of preconceived notions of what you believe is morally correct or right in your life, right? And you hold on to them, and it takes a certain amount of like personal courage to allow bad ideas to die. And for me, I remember one of the early on chapters was about the concept of minimum wage, of which I was always an avid supporter for having a basic living wage for people, until I actually read and was presented with a preponderance of evidence to show that nothing can be more harmful for poor communities than having a minimum wage actually imparted on you. And and for me, it was like completely blew my mind, because I had to break everything down, and every chapter sort of brings in something like that makes you completely rethink how the world is shaped, and makes you also like another great thing that Thomas Sowell does is really makes you question the collective wisdom of the sort of intelligentsia class that exists in America. That sort of is always telling you how to live and what to do. And he sort of points out the fact and how incredibly wrong they are, and how often that actually occurs. And that to me was just so fascinating that it allowed me to gain a certain amount of humility, and I would say productive skepticism as I march through my own journey of life. Whenever I'm presented with something, am I being presented with an emotional argument, or am I being presented with facts and evidence that lead to different outcomes? And trying to differentiate those two things is a tremendously helpful lesson to have in life.
Yeah. So if I got that clear, is that what you're saying is for a better way of saying it, for poorer people, that he doesn't agree with the fact that there should be a minimum wage? Is that what you're? Yeah.
So to dive into it a little bit, not that it matters. He's African American, and one of the first places he presents is when minimum wage was imparted was post World War II era America, and how Black unemployment was declining precipitously. And the moment that minimum wage came in, Black unemployment started to spike up tremendously. Right. It was basically based on the fact that if businesses can't afford to pay people a wage that makes them valuable to the entity itself, then they will cease having jobs. And so what basically happens is that you have poor communities that will say, let's call it today a $15 minimum wage, right? Yep. Businesses are much less likely to enter in a new neighborhood, open up a Starbucks or whatever, if they have a minimum wage that won't allow them to be profitable having their basic functions. Jobs that are menial for low or no skilled workers will no longer be available. And what you end up with is higher pockets of permanent unemployment and government dependency that leads to basically just continued disparate outcomes for disadvantaged groups. Right. So the sort of analogy on the most base level would be like, all right, let's say you have someone who works for your landscaping company, and you're paying them whatever it is they agree to. It's a voluntary transaction whenever employment happens. Instead of that person not having a job because the minimum wage is 15, and let's say you're paying this person 10, they have the ability to learn a new set of skills, to eventually learn how to become managers in their real life and work their way up the ladder slowly, as opposed to never getting a chance at all. And so that would be the sort of like supposition of that chapter. And that's something that I couldn't have agreed with less prior to reading that book. And I was in my 20s, I think, when that book came out, and it was just like, wow, maybe I'm wrong about a lot of things, and maybe that's a good thing. And maybe I need to start like investigating my own sort of my preconceptions of what I think the world is, or how it should be, or how people should act in the world.
And John, it's interesting you bring that up, because I think I saw maybe, I don't know, a year or two ago, I saw something very similar with like internships, where there are now certain laws where, you have to pay interns, you can't have unpaid interns, right? And like certain laws depending on the state on whether you can even have like an unpaid intern. And, that's kind of like one of the best ways that people who are young get experience and get into companies, and then they start working there, right? It's sort of very similar sort of concept with the government telling you, what's best between you and this particular person, right? As opposed to kind of letting you make your own decision, which kind of reminds me of what you're talking about when I saw that. And like, I know I started out in college as an intern for a company, and then ended up getting a full-time job there. And I wanted that experience more than anything else. I didn't care about the pay or anything surrounded to it. So,
and it's like, for me too, it's like the intent is there, the outcome is not, right? And it's like, do people care about the vanity of their intentions more than actual outcomes? And I would argue that in politics and life, generally the answer is yes, right? And so something can sound good and make you feel good, like you're doing the right thing, but the actual outcome might be the exact opposite.
So what was his outcome effectively? What was the outcome there? So let's say we scrapped minimum wage.
Yes.
What did he present? Like, had a bit of history there, like which changed your mind and that you totally agree with, and that would help going forward for companies? Because obviously the point that you're making there is, if you can't go into somewhere, if you're a business, you need to make a profit. Worst case, you got to break even, right? If you don't break even, you lose money, you haven't got a business, right? You got a liability.
Yeah.
So what was the resolution there that would help these maybe more poorer neighborhoods and stuff? In his mindset, how would he have shifted them there beyond the minimum wage?
So, I mean, for me, for him, it's often allowing free markets to solve problems that social constructionism simply can't.
Yeah.
Right. And in this case, in this very specific case, it would be let people make free exchanges of what they believe is their living wage or the wage that they want to work for, allow them to build up a set of skills over time that will increase the likelihood of them moving up the wage scale. Yeah. That's how life works, right? So like, let's take two disparate groups in America. Japanese Americans make something like, I'm paraphrasing here, 50% more than Latin Americans do in America, right? Mm-hmm. And you might like, well, that must mean that like, wow, there's just these great inequities. And partially that might be true. But the reality is that the average Japanese American is 20 years older than the average Latin American in this country. Right. And as we move through life and age, generally our wealth increases, right? So for me, it's a first step and a fascinating exploration of the way that we perceive intent and outcomes and impacts and what might actually be the common sense wisdom that no one seems to have anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And for me too, it's like I'm to talk about his background. He grew up on a dirt floor in Charlotte, moved to Harlem in his teens, went to Fordham, and then went on to Harvard. And what he found was like there was a big separation between this sort of like intelligentsia class that he had himself become a part of, and their complete lack of common sense wisdom, and their obsession of their almost like godlike stature, that because they have like some kind of expertise in an esoteric domain, right? They're good at being a linguist like Noam Chomsky or something, that somehow permeates across every domain that exists in the world, right? And so you get this sort of like hubris, like this belief that I sort of know everything and I can construct the world in the way that I want it. And what he saw that was a complete opposite of growing up with what he called, uneducated but common sense people who had more wisdom than these people we've anointed as being the people who should be leading our country. So I kind of went around a little bit there, but that's sort of, No.
It makes sense because it set the tone for his background. Like you said, he come from very poor, humble beginnings, but he took himself from that and he made his way, did you say, was to Harvard. So that is a big paradigm shift. I mean, I never grew up in the dirt, but I come from a poor background, or poorish background, if you like. But for me, it was mindset change. I had to read books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad to break away those chains in my own head of, you know, I was never taught like financial literacy and stuff like that. You know, people around me would say people with money are evil. And it's like, it's not until you read that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, when he says money will amplify who you are. And it's the way that you look at stuff. So it's good and interesting to hear a guy that wrote that book actually came from those beginnings and was able to set the bar so high, because it's not very often that people will come from, like you said, that person there from the dirt to Harvard. That's a rarity. I mean, I don't have the numbers on it, but there's a very, very slim chance to get in there because you don't have all of that education in between and that surroundings around you to give you that kind of education. So I'd be interested to look at that book. Yeah.
What he said to him was what made the difference for him, though, ironically, maybe in today's day and age, was that like he was old enough because he just turned 90, right? Where his teachers were even in Harlem and in Charlotte, like before he got to Fort, were relentlessly tough on him. Right, and did not give an inch or forgive him for his background. They had the same sort of hard expectations for him as everyone else. And he said that was, to me, what changed my outcomes. And he had a story when he first got to Harvard after leaving Fordham to go to graduate school, and he had a white roommate. And 2 weeks into school, his white roommate said, "Tom, when are you going to stop messing around and start getting to work?" Right. And he's like, for me, that was a snap that the standards here are different than where I came from. And he's like, I wonder, would that in today's day and age at Harvard, would a white kid say that to a kid of a different skin color now? And anyway, he's so full of common sense wisdom. And to me, it's utterly fascinating. And I don't agree with everything that he says, but I do with a lot. And I just like being challenged intellectually and actually like looking at ideas that are totally different from mine. And for me, everyone should set that as a goal for their own life, to not just follow their sort of preconceived notions of what is or what is not.
Exactly. And then you pick up books and you take elements from those books that you want to take, and that's what helps build and develop you. Liran, we covered Think and Grow Rich last week. So did you want to take The Slight Edge or Man's Search for Meaning? What's your preference?
Let's take The Slight Edge.
Okay.
So The Slight Edge book I read maybe, I don't know, a couple of years ago. And the whole concept, and there's a lot of books that talk about this same exact concept. It was just this book kind of made it really easy and digestible and gave you insight into it. But the whole idea is that, you know, success in anything is not this. It's not as difficult if you take certain small steps every single day, right? Small habits, small steps, things you implement in your life every single day, whether that's, you know, success in your business or, you know, losing, you know, if you needed to lose 100 pounds, it might seem like this insurmountable feat that could be very difficult. But if you just took like small steps every single day towards that, then you would like slowly chip away at that goal. And essentially that's the concept of the book. And it just makes you realize that, you know, success and achieving what you want, is hard, but it's not that hard, right? Like it's both components. Like it's doable. You just have to be consistent with, you know, the steps you're going to take along the way to get there and execute on it. And again, there's a variety of books on, you know, there's Atomic Habits and there's a book called Tiny Habits. And there's a lot of books that kind of all talk about the same concept. The reason all these books exist is because it works. You know, I think success is really, or whatever you define or want success to be in your life is really, I would say, if you can encompass one word, is consistency, right? And that's in business. You know, you heard John talk about their, you know, sort of moment of celebration, but, you know, it was short-lived, right? Because the next step is like, okay, we need to keep doing what we're doing in order to keep having the success, and, you know, not sitting back and looking at, you know, your past wins, not, you know,
resting on your laurels or anything, just going for. Yeah. And
I think part of it, you know, another book I mentioned to you, which you can almost combine together with this, a little bit of a different book, but called The Power of Now, which is your greatest power is in the current moment, right? like we've all said, including myself, we've all said to ourselves, I'm going to start the diet tomorrow. I'm going to exercise tomorrow. I'm going to do it the next day. But like, there's no power in that. Your greatest power is in taking action in the moment, which goes in line with those habits. Like the only power you have is in taking action now. The one part I'll add with Think and Grow Rich was Think and Grow Rich sort of opened my eyes to the idea. And this was, years ago, probably, 12, 13, 14 years ago when I read that book, was open my eyes to the power that it isn't just doing, that gets us the results, right? The first thing is think and grow rich. So you have to have the plan and the vision in your mind first, and write things down and make lists, and then you can execute on the things that you want to achieve. And I think a lot of us are kind of caught up in this like doing, but you need to have a vision of, it's kind of like saying, you want to get from New York to California driving without a GPS, right? Like you're more likely to get there if you turn on the GPS and you put together like a roadmap plan of how you're going to get there. Yeah. And that's, to kind of sum it up, that's what that book, gave me, at least, like the idea of, that getting to where you want to go is a combination of thinking and doing, and thinking and doing, and kind of reassessing.
Is there a moment in that book that you actually, when you took action on something that was related to that book, it made you think of that time? Do you have an example of that? Is it just a catalogue of things that came together?
No, I think that book, that book sort of put me on a kind of like John said, one, to realize that you really don't know anything, and coming into any learning environment with the idea that open-minded and like take away any preconceived notions of what you thought success would be. And that book was my sort of pathway to personal development and personal growth. So it was kind of the impetus to get into like Jim Rohn, right? Mm-hmm. Said that your level of success will always match your level of personal development, right? And like starting to that book was the gateway to focusing on personal development as kind of the only path, the only thing you can focus on is focus on growing yourself. You can't the external forces are ones you can't control, but you can control how you react, how you grow yourself. And I would say more so that book was just kind of like the opening doorway into the world of realizing that, working on yourself is sort of the path to success.
Yeah.
Or to get what you want in your life, whatever that means to you.
Cool. Norm, let's bring you in. You've listed down a few as well. The EMyth, the 4 agreements, Raving Fans and Gung Ho. Which one would you like to kick off with?
Well, I really wanted to talk about green eggs and ham, but
we can do that as well. I don't know if we'll keep people's attention, but we'll give it a go. Yeah.
Probably at the top of the list, it's the EMyth for sure.
Okay. It's a classic, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a classic, and there's lots of other books that have come out afterwards. There's lots of other people talking about how to systemize and automate your business. But that one, for me, we were at the time in a hyper growth company, and we were losing our hair, and I did see. But what it allowed me to do is answer something that was happening all the time, every day. I was living what was called they call it's a sales roller coaster, where the person, the entrepreneur, knows and has passion about what they're doing, what they're selling. They take care of all their customer service. They take care of everything until the point where there's a breaking point where you need somebody. You bring the person in, but you bring them in so quickly. You just say, "Here you go." They fail. And then you blame them, and usually you're screaming and yelling because they did such a terrible job. You take back, you go into the same sort of system where, okay, you prove them wrong, that you can do it, and the sales are going back up. Then you hire this person that you don't train, and it's just it's always that roller coaster. So that was one of the big items I got out of the book, and that I put into really put into action, the ways to get out of that. And it wasn't simple. First of all, I had to live this book And then secondly, I had to teach everybody in our office. We had 23 people in the office at the time, and had to get them to come on board by building this corporate culture, which we didn't have at the time.
That makes sense. And what was the real standout from the book, where you read the book and then there was parts that went into action? Have you got a little story behind it?
Yeah, probably one of the biggest things that stood out was to break down every task. And I wasn't doing that. All these repetitive tasks that I'd walk in the morning. At that time, email was just kind of coming out, but I do certain things every morning. I would always be involved with every little thing. And so what the book said was, break down your tasks. If you've got a $10 item, give it to somebody. If it's $100 item, give it to them. Just prioritize your tasks. And if it's $1,000 or $10,000, you should be over here working on your business. You shouldn't be, taking care of sorting the mail or doing checks. And this really helped me delegate. And by being able to delegate and bringing on even more people, we're really able to grow the company. I was able to be more of a visionary. I was able to go out, network, do what I needed to do to get the business to the next level. And I everything I've learned, I actually went on to the EMyth Academy and went through all that and applied it to every single business that I get involved with. And if I can't make it automated and scalable, I don't get involved. But probably the simplest thing was just how to build culture into your company, how to bring people and get that buy-in. If you don't have buy-in, so many people make especially smaller entrepreneurs that are just getting out there, they think everybody in their company understands what they're dictating. This is what I'm saying, this is our culture. That's not the way to grow a company. You have to have that buy-in. You have to have everybody come in and understand what the culture of the company is. And it's not from the top, just from the top down. It could be from the bottom up. It's everybody's input, so they understand. We used to have this receptionist, and she answered the phone one day, and I was coming around the corner, and I said, "This is wrong." So we were a pretty large promotions company. We sold promotional products to Fortune 500 companies. Anyways, I come around the corner, she's on the phone, and she says, I guess somebody had said, "So what do you do?" And she said, "We sell stuff to big companies." Right then, we had to change.
That's very specific.
Yeah, we sell stuff to big companies. So anyways, that was a great takeaway, just to be able to get everybody in. And we started the process. I remember it was 7 a.m. one morning, and we just kind of look at, how do we start this thing? This is what I'm learning. Let's do this together. We tried to bring in at one time a professional coach that could help us out, but it worked out really well.
One of the mental shifts that sort of I had to make, I was a bank manager before sort of coming into working for myself, et cetera. And it was very easy when you had, a teller or a banker or employees, that weren't performing to blame. But one of the things that I've learned and sort of taken ownership of as I've gotten a little older and managing people is that ultimately it's your failure. If your people are not performing, you hire that person. If that person is not performing, it's your failure, right? And it's your job to really, kind of coach them up. And if you can't, then, they can't work at your company, obviously. But, I think taking that ownership of your responsibility to, not put a blame on an employee who's not, performing, but what are you doing wrong, so that, and not what resources are you not giving that person? What training are you not giving that person? What are you doing wrong that this person in your company that you hired is, or that your company hired is not performing? And sort of taking, whether that's, I know a lot of us in the Amazon world have VAs, et cetera. I'm super easy to just blame, they're incompetent or they don't know what they're doing, or, I'm going to fire them, as opposed to taking ownership. And if you're able to help that person perform, they're going to be super loyal to your business. They're going to be a much stronger employee and could be there for the long term, as opposed to, I think, taking the approach of, blaming the employee as opposed to blaming yourself, really.
John, I've known you about a year now, just shy of a year. You was at 60 employees. You're at what now? 100 plus?
We have we just hit 200 FTEs in the United States.
Wow.
And probably definitely well over 300 now if you count overseas people too.
Wow.
So obviously it's a massive change in how our business operates and what my core job is as a person was doing everything. I was the deal team. I was the creative team. I was early on, you know what I mean? Like going to a place now where, I have 80 people under my purview or something along these lines. For me, one of the greatest joys or gifts that I've been given in my life is a life filled with failures. So for me, it just makes me very comfortable with risk. And part of my job is to empower people to make uncomfortable choices and to take risks and to give them the courage by me advocating the responsibility and putting on myself, saying, I want you to try to launch these series of products. I realize there might be a decent level of failure. I'll take full responsibility if it goes wrong. Just trust me and go for it. I found that's been one of the biggest things for me with people is particularly with the younger generation is they're very risk averse. Right. So for me,
it's interesting considering they're meant to be fearless. They're risk averse. It's interesting.
I think it's a cultural shift. Honestly, I think that kids who do well in school and stuff like that, with their propensity is to like not make mistakes. I want to get really good grades. Right. Not like I'm going to try this presentation that's risky and it might go really well or it might fail. And so for me, it's shifting that mindset. And another thing I use constantly, it's a quote from Carl Jung to my team, is like, the thing you need most is in the place you least want to look. And that's something I have to remind myself very often as someone who's not functionally the most organized human being in the world. What
about the situation with quite often with companies that, people good at managing 10, some are good at 50, some are good at 100, some are good at 200, but you're now at like 300. And sometimes if you bring in the wrong people too early, they're too corporate, they're not got that startup mindset. How do you counteract that? And how does it get to the point where have you got a number in your head where you'd go, right, that's me done, I'm stepping aside now, this is for someone to manage people at that level, not because you can't do it, but because you don't want to do it, it's not your bag, I
think frankly at some point some level of investment is going to make that decision for us. Like if we continue to grow at this scale, that won't be necessarily my problem. For me, it's like it's a couple things. It's remaining relaxed and focused, and finding really good people that you can trust. And distribute responsibility to, and then understand that when people come and they bring you things you want them to build in the world, whatever it might be, that they might only be able to do it at 80% of what you think your capability might be, but having 15 of those people at 60% or 80% or 95% is better than you stretching yourself thin and accepting it's like a real letting go. And I think for our senior management team, that has been the universal challenge for us, is the idea that we used to control everything just 2 years ago. Right. And now you have to let people bring things for you, and you have to think ahead. One of the risks you have to take is like, I'm hiring 5 people for something else that I hope is going to happen in the future because we will need it then, as opposed to just thinking about like, what do I need today? And again, it's a risk distribution sort of model, but it's been certainly fascinating. And then also too, as we build a bureaucracy, right, we have to put structures in place that weren't there before. We were a pirate ship, we're now a cruise ship, right? They have different sets of rules, and we have to make sure that we're cognizant of that. And then we bring in people, Danny Bachvar is our new president. He ran Girl Scouts of America and Weight Watchers previously, and his other jobs. We have to know, you have to know your own ignorance. Right. We didn't have those structures or know how to run them. Carlos and Josh had never had more than 70 people at a company. before I don't think, right? So you get people in who are smarter than you at this very thing, and you let them do your job, and you humbly accept that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And then hopefully things work out.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Danny, can I add to that?
Of course you can.
One of the things we found too is if you've got somebody that does something incredible, like they get things done, it's your go-to person. A lot of the times companies will just keep adding on. Oh, this is somebody I can rely on. They give them more tasks
On that person's
So they
shoulders.
get- Yeah, and all of a sudden you get this person that's put on this pedestal, and you'll start to hear these, I can't trust this person anymore, or all of a sudden that pedestal starts to crack, and you either fire the person because they're incompetent. So this person that was incredible turns into this incompetent person, all because you've given them too much. And the other thing and the other thing that I've done, you take, let's say, a great salesperson, and you make them the sales manager because they're a great salesperson. Doesn't mean they're going to be a great sales manager, So it could really affect your business.
Yeah, I had a disaster hire for a startup back in 2010. I took one of the best sub editors of a magazine and brought them over to our company. We had like this online magazine music thing, and I've known him for 10 years, but really relaxed. But we're in a startup environment, and completely the wrong person to employ. He was a great copy editor and everything else, but he didn't have, I take ownership for all of that. And within a few months, I've had to let him go because I was end up securing editorial that he should be out going to get, but he wasn't a go-getter. He's brilliant what he'd done. He's very well respected in the music industry, but he didn't fit that role at that specific time at a startup company when you're the new people in town and you have to go out there and fight for the editorial. So I had to replace him with someone with less skills than him in some sense, but a complete go-getter. I went out there and, they went and nailed it and pulled in all the editorial, but they just didn't have so sometimes I think you get blinded by certain things because you have prior relationships with people, and you work off of their reputation and that they're a nice person, but you're not aware of what happens until the after fact. So I learned a heavy lesson in that because it was very public as well in the industry that we were in. I'm going to say some hellos and then we'll get back into some books again. Tiff says, good morning. Jamie says, morning, gents. Hope you're well. Looking forward to the show. Owen says, hi, Danny, Liran, John, and Norm. Cheers for your insights. And now, Chris. Hoping Chris will join us in a moment. I'm reading the book. I'm only halfway through and I'm ready for the change, says Miriam. That was the EMyth. Tiff says, that's what I'm learning as well. If they don't do their job right, it's my fault. Everything is my fault. Exactly. So buck stops with you. Say hello to people in the feed. Phil's here. Ricky is back. Kevin's here. Peter's here as well. Sav, Dave's here. Owen, Hissing, Jacob is here as well. John, do you have any other books up your sleeve?
Geez. Yeah, I have so many that really have an impact on my life. One that I just sort of I think it was the last book I picked up in an airport. It was 12 Rules for Life. It's a wonderful, wonderful book. I would recommend Thomas Sowell's entire collection. Look, as far as from a business perspective goes, I actually enjoy, I'll read Daniel Kahneman, and I recommend Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and all the sort of traditional sort of, psychological business ones. I enjoy sort of philosophical abstractions. Yeah. The things like Thomas Sowell for me is great. I just finished reading Douglas Murray, who's from Your Side of the Pond, his Madness of Crowds, which was just an utterly fascinating read. Man's Search for Meaning, I just reread recently. Yeah, Viktor Frankl.
That's quite a short book as well. Very sad. Yeah. Liran, did you want to jump in? Because we haven't got long left. I want to go back round and throw in some more books.
I'm actually in the middle of that book. So I didn't get to part 2 yet, where he talks sort of a lot about the reflections. I'm more in the part where, he's sort of in the camp and talks about it. But yeah, where he talks about sort of thinking about love and thinking about humor and how you can still sort of find these things even in sort of the worst of worst situations, and that's what drives you to continue on to live. But I'm currently reading that book. I find that I like to read. I don't know about you guys, but like a few books at one particular time.
Yeah.
I'm also reading Tribe of Mentors right now, Tim Ferriss.
Yes, good book.
And that's a great book because you can sort of pick it up anywhere. It's got about 100 different people that he asked sort of the same set of 11 questions about, like, sort of one quote about their biggest failures. It's got a lot of great lessons. And one of the things John said, I read this weekend in the book, he mentioned his failures, and that seems to be a theme throughout the book of the people that have had success. But there's a quote in there, and it's like an expert is only somebody who's failed at like every single aspect of sort of one particular niche or industry, right? Is what makes you an expert. And that's definitely a theme in the book, is everybody has gone through sort of massive failure before they were able to get that success, and that failure is really sort of weaved in as a part of success, but not the opposite of success.
I use this analogy often on who do I want to be, right? I think of this vision in my head, and I go back to these old sort of war movies, right? That there's like the front line happening. Is there's soldiers in the trenches, and the bombs are going off, and the soldiers are like covering their helmets, and then walks a general who just has a cigar in his mouth and walks across the line while the bombs are flying off with full confidence. And at first I thought that's just sort of like this sort of like machismo sort of hubris. But what I think it's an analogy to is like the fact that when you've been dealt so many blows and you've managed a way to get around them and survive and still elevate yourself, and that would be perceived as the general in this case, right? Like your fortitude and your ability to deal with problems just increases exponentially. And to me, that's a very admirable place to want to be, and something that I sort of seek to be. And I'm certainly not there yet, but maybe one day, right? And that's sort of for me, it's a good set of values to consider. Is when you're failing, you're learning.
It's not so much, John, what you're kind of saying is like, it's almost not so much that you need confidence to succeed, but you need courage, right? It's a different kind of mental sort of shift. Not the attitude that I know everything and I have everything it takes to be successful. Is that, I have the courage that even when, shit hits the fan, I'll be able to sort of figure it out and take the next step and be able to move forward.
This I forget who said it. It was a great quote. It was something along like, if you want to have success, you have to stop caring about it. And what that actually means is, like, if you care about success so much, you become a very careful person.
Yeah.
Right. And at some point, you have to just go for it. Right. And you really have to just accept, like, all right, you're out in the winds of the world, and you have to accept where it takes you. And I think that's really a tough place for a lot of people to get to.
Yeah, I think this is something I've been thinking about for a long time, but then I had a conversation with someone 3 days ago, and I called it learning through pain. Is that sometimes, that you do things over and over again, like as entrepreneurs, you run with the ball, right? So you make all these little mistakes and they can start to add up. I think the real big lessons is when it becomes painful for you in some way, whether failure, whether it's a public failure, it's a loss of a large chunk of money and stuff like that. And I think with stuff like that, it really resonates, is that you very rarely do that same thing again if it became a very painful situation. It could be the same as, like, your marriage might fail. You won't make that mistake going into your next marriage. And does that make sense? I don't know if you get that feeling as well, is that some of my biggest mistakes I've made, and I've never made them mistakes again, ever, is through the pain, because you remember that much more. And that's different from discipline. Liran is very, very disciplined. We talk about this stuff all the time. And I think sometimes if you lack the focus of discipline, then you end up in that painful place. It's like I always say to people, you land where you land. Those millions of micro decisions is got you where you are today. You landed there because of all those decisions leading up. And I think along the way, those painful moments stand out so much is that you very rarely make those mistakes again, unless you're completely stupid or it is something that was way out of your control.
Danny, I would say also, like, thank you for the compliment, but I don't consider myself very disciplined, but I've also learned from the pain, right? So I know it's going to be more painful if I don't exercise a few times a week, because I'll feel like crap. So I learn from the pain and I do it, and I force myself to do it, right? So in a sense, or whether that's working or just being consistent in anything else, is because, like you said, I felt the pain of not doing it, and I know what the outcome is. And so, it's like one of those, fear versus greed, pain versus pleasure. Like I know I'll deal with the pain, so I'm willing to push myself sometimes, even when I don't want to. Type situation. I think it's hard to be disciplined, but it's easier to try to be consistent and also hold yourself accountable. I make lists of what I want to do for the month, and just being able to check off, something daily on my list, for some reason psychologically makes it easier, because as humans, we want to just check stuff off a list, right? So like I force myself to do certain actions, certain habits that, but it's because of pain also, right? Not wanting to go through similar things over and over again.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of reading habits, since the age of digital and everything else, have you guys habits changed? Like, I can't sit there. I haven't read a whole book since about 2013. The moment that I see Tim Ferriss do speed reading, that was it. It ruined the pleasure of reading books. Do you guys still want to sit down and actually take a book, or do you use Audible, or do you just kick through segments? I'd be interested to hear, in starting with you, John.
I listen now mainly, and I do it when I exercise. I do it when I do the dishes. I probably 2 to 4 hours a day when I'm not working. I'm listening to content that I think that stimulates my mind. And particularly in this time of real quiet, where
there's plenty.
Like, I've had a lot of long walks. Let's put it that way. But for me to have the flexibility to learn that way and to contemplate and to learn with patience has been a really wonderful gift. I mean, you have YouTube now. You can go find the world's greatest lecturers. Find 15 hours of their stuff and just listen through it. Like you're just auditing a class at MIT or Harvard. And what a gift that is, to have the power in your hands to actually do it, and to do it in your own pace. But much like you, actually reading books in a traditional manner, I generally consume shorter, like, articles and things of that nature in that way.
What about you, Lee Wen?
So I've been finding that the only time I finish a book is when I have the physical hard copy book, and I get through it and I can mark off where I left off. I also find that I need to completely, I'm doing it a lot more on the weekends now. Like, I'll read 100 pages a day of a book, or like I'll read a good part of a book just on like a Saturday or something. And it seems like it's much easier to do when I'm fully disconnected. I don't have my phone with me. I don't have anything with me. I'm just sitting with the book and I can enjoy it. And that when I'm on my phone, on Kindle or Audible or whatever it is, I just get distracted. There's too many things going on. So, and when I do listen to, if I'm exercising or whatever, I'm mostly during that time kind of listening to podcasts or things like that, from an audio perspective. But I don't know. I find something about having the physical book easier. And I'm sort of not a believer in speed reading. Actually, Naval Ravikant just had
he's against it.
Had a tweet about it, that he's also I just believe in like enjoying the book and digesting the book, and like I don't need to speed read. I'm also one that I don't think I've sort of benefited. Like, I've tried these like book summary app, like Blinkist or whatever. Like, I think there's just a lot more value in actually reading the book.
Of course. I think maybe what my confusion is that I'm not necessarily always to pleasure. I don't read fiction or anything. It's not stuff that I want to learn. And I suppose me, like, thinking, how fast can I get to the bits that I want? Normally the intro's drawn out. You can look in the index to find interesting parts, and you constantly flick through. And you end up getting a lot of the information out. And I think maybe I've extracted or removed the pleasure of reading the book. The actual, it should be fun. Sit down. This is the way it's done. Use that as a time, not as, right, I need that bit of information and I don't really want to go through. So I'm going to jump through all these sections.
Right. I mean, I definitely read books that I want to learn from, but I read for pleasure. Like it's a pleasure to learn. Yeah. Right. So I'm reading books that like I'm interested in, and whether that's going to help me in business or life or whatever, like I'm reading for pleasure and being able to pick up nuggets from the book that I can implement in my life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Norm, do you want to throw in the last book? We've got about 8 minutes or so. Is there something you want to add?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
definitely. So this book, it was a book that came into my life during a massive failure. So I was I was pretty depressed at the time. I was trying to get back into things. And anyways, I was given this book, and it applies 100% to business. So I've been able to take from what I learned personally and apply it into business. And it's called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book, but it basically works on 4 things. And that's be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make any assumptions, and always do your best. Those are the 4 rules. Yeah. And so if you apply them to business, I mean, it's perfect. I mean, that's exactly the type of business person I want to be. That's exactly the type of employees I want, the type of customers I want. It's how I live my life.
Excellent. So quickly, one round, we'll go around the room again, starting with your John book. So start with your book, John. If you was to do a 1-minute sales pitch of that book, what would you say? The economic one.
I'm going to do is I'm going to read a couple quotes for take me a minute here. These are all from Thomas Sowell. It takes considerable knowledge just to realize the extent of your own ignorance. When people are presented with the alternative of hating themselves for their failure or hating others for their success, they seldom choose to hate themselves. It's usually futile to talk facts and analysis to people who are enjoying a sense of moral superiority in their ignorance.
Wow.
I'll do one more here. It's hard to imagine a more stupid or dangerous way of making decisions than by putting decisions in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong. So those are a couple excerpts for him, but I hope that just points to like his profound nature of making very elegant and simple statements.
And really accountability. A lot of that's about accountability, isn't it?
Yes.
Through them quotes. It's all about accountability, self-accountability. It's great. Liran.
As far as the slight edge, I would say my sales pitch would be, if you are not as consistent as you want to be in the things that you want to do, I think the book will inspire you to add things into your life that you should be doing, but you're not.
Excellent. Norm?
The EMyth. So I think it's called the EMyth Revised or Revisited. Yeah. If you want to remove a ton of stress out of your everyday, day-to-day activity, take a look at this book. It's going to help organize your life. It's going to help organize your business, and you're going to be able to scale and automate. Like the key is being able to scale and automate a business. If you don't have that, I don't get into the business.
Makes sense. John, if someone would like to sell their Amazon business to you guys, what's the best way to reach you?
You can just reach me directly at john@thraz.io. Also on our deal team, Ken runs it on the front end there. So that's ken@thraz.io. And we're always happy to, even if you're not sure if you want to sell now or you're kind of just wondering what's going on, we're always happy to have a 15, 30-minute conversation with you.
Excellent. Superb. Liran, if people want you for PPC and all-round Amazon business,
sure. Website is incrementumdigital.com or Liran at Incrementum Digital, or social media. Anywhere on social media is good.
And the new podcast is called?
New podcast is called E-commerce Mindset. So check it out. We've had some good recent interviews in the last couple weeks.
Superb. Norm, your podcast you just launched as well, haven't you?
Yeah, I've got a podcast called I Know This Guy, and I just talk to interesting people about their success and failure.
Excellent. And what's the best way people can reach you for other services as well?
You could reach me at norm@amz.club, and for PPC or content marketing or sourcing and logistics.
Sounds good. Guys, thank you so much for sharing and joining us today. We'll be back 4 p.m. BST tomorrow. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Take care. I'll see you then. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, fellas. Thanks. Bye.